Another thing with that predictability, and we see it a lot with children who are anxious. We see it a lot with all families, but especially with children who are anxious, is the word that comes out when they describe what happens at night is the word sometimes. And the minute I hear the word sometimes, it is a complete red flag to me. Sometimes I lay down with her in her room. Sometimes I just get frustrated and I leave. Sometimes I have her let her lie in my room. Sometimes I don't want sometimes. And for kids who are anxious, starting 2 hours before bedtime, they don't know what's coming. And so they're so anxious about what's going to happen. Are you going to stay with me tonight? Are you going to lie with me tonight? Am I going to be allowed to go in your bed? Like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And then they start talking about it, right? So the whole night is going to be, are you going to stay with me? Are you going to stay with me? And by the time then bedtime comes, the parent's so tired of it, they're just like, no, like I'm done talking about this. So we want, life isn't always, we want almost always. So we want a plan. And I usually start with a plan. I not always start with, I always want a plan where everyone can be successful. So I often just calm the whole thing down. Look, do you sometimes stay with her and sometimes you don't? I just want you to stay with her. Let's just have a plan so nobody is anxious about it. And where are you going to be when you stay with her? Like, let's be really concrete. Are you going to be lying on the bed or are you going to be sitting in the chair? Pick one, and that's what you're going to do. And there's no fighting.
I love this. I love what you just said, that, and I'm going to use that with the sometimes, because for me, when I'm working with families, no matter what aspect of treatment it is, structure, consistency, routine, predictability allows for the sense of control, knowing what, when, and where, even when they're practicing their exposures, creating the charts and knowing what, when, and where. And what you're saying is, when you hear sometimes, it gives that child a sense of uneasiness. It increases their anxiety without knowing and their worry about it. So thank you for that. I think our listeners are going to really, really take that and run with that. And I love it. And I'm going to use it more because I just love it. And it's just so true. You don't want sometimes.
You
You
don't want
want,
sometimes.
right. You don't want sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes you so anxious, right? So you're just spiraling anxiety. I'd rather you just stay with them and get rid of the sometimes. And then we can work from there. So I'm glad that was really helpful. But that is the red flag for me every time, that word sometimes, and especially with children with anxiety. So now let's move into, should you stay with your child? Should you let them sleep in your bed? What should you do? For anxious children, that's what they want and that's what they need. Do you always want to be for their lifetime staying with them? No, we want to be teaching them coping skills. We want to be teaching them how to be able to be independent, how to feel confident in themselves and feel good about themselves. In really young children, we will say, you know what, it may not be worth the fight. You know what, they're 3 years old and you've been doing this for 3 years. And, let's really talk about how to make this so it works for everybody in the family. But, a 10-year-old is getting to the point where they don't want it either. And they feel, even if they want it, they don't really want it because it's really making them feel young and babyish and embarrassed and all those things. And they want to feel good about themselves. So we always do really slow changes. So I will always start with, let's get rid of the sometimes. What happens every night is I leave and then they cry for an hour and we go back and forth and I end up lying down with them. Just start the night by lying down with them. Let's take out the fight. Just lie down with them. And then we slowly ease families out. So we'll spend a week with them lying down with them. We'll spend a week with them sitting next to the bed. We spend a week with them sitting halfway across the room. It may be 3 weeks, it may be 2 days, whatever it's going to be. There's no magic period of time, but it's all about being consistent and being really clear and having a child feel safe and successful while the parent is also able to have them practice their coping skills. So especially working along with somebody who does anxiety and having a child in treatment for anxiety is teaching them those coping skills at the same time that I'm doing that behavioral piece for the sleep part of it. And it may we often end up with, the parent down the hall in their bedroom while their child is falling asleep. We haven't talked about middle of the night much. So I don't know if you want to go there or keep talking about bedtime.
No, I think we should. I mean, I was going to bring up the fact of siblings. Sometimes having siblings that you can, either share a room with or they spend some time almost like a little bit of a sleepover from time to time. This has helped some of my families, and like you said, it's the balance. And one of the things that came to mind when you were talking about this is kind of what's socially appropriate. And I know it can be what's socially appropriate for one may not be for another. But when you have a 15-year-old that's still sleeping with their parents, like, no, you've got to really work with them to stepwise it out. Even if it's I'm in for 20 minutes, I'm out for 5. I come in, I check on them. Sometimes the kids, just want you to check. But having that, so a 3, a 4, a 5-year old, you get to a point where you want them to be independent. And it's exactly what you said. The kids get to a point where they know this isn't right. Like mommy shouldn't be sleeping with me, and I'm 12. But there's nothing wrong with mom coming in, giving a kiss, or dad and hugging them, and then getting up and kind of walking away and teaching them those. So I think it's a balancing act with your treatment professional of what works for your family too. Different cultures, they have the sleeping together for a long time. I have a family I actually just saw yesterday where the kids all sleep in the same room with the parents, and it's cultural for them. I'm not going to fight them on it, but that's ridiculous. But at some point, they will start to change that. I don't know how they'll have other babies and things. They want another child if the children are sleeping.
They do. They figure it out.
They figure it out. They figure it out. No.